We are now so excited to begin our VQB5 Quality Profile Preview webinar. I am pleased to introduce our presenter, Chris Myers, Director of Quality Measurement and Improvement from the Virginia Department of Education. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, Kim. Hi, everybody. Good to be here this evening. I'm Chris Myers. I'm the at the Department of Education. I'm the Director of Quality Measurement and Improvement, and I'm really excited to be here today to kind of walk through the quality profile information. You may have looked at it previously. You may have attended our March webinar. Tonight, our goal is really to walk through it. Some information might be repeated, but we also want to kind of walk through at a little bit different level now that we've gotten some questions and some feedback from around the field to make sure that we are addressing the areas that you all are most interested in and to really hone in on the areas that we really want to get some feedback on. So we hope by the end of this webinar that you'll be ready and able to share some feedback with us. And as Kim mentioned, there will be some opportunities along the way to answer your questions and to get some feedback via the polls. So I think with that, before we actually jump into the content, Kim, let's go ahead and launch that first poll. I'm curious to know how many of you were in the practice years participating or whether or not this is your first year participating in VQB5. So this one's a pretty simple one. Is this your first year in VQB5? You can select yes or no, and then we'll share the results.
Wonderful. We have over 60% have already voted, so we just need to leave it open a little bit longer to hear from everybody else. Okay, we're at 80%. So we're going to close in about 2 seconds. Okay, thank you all so much. I'm going to close and share out the results.
Okay, so really interesting. So we've got actually more of you attending tonight. This is your very first year in VQB5, so that's great. We'll make sure that we try to cover things in as much detail, but please don't feel free to kind of stop us so we can clarify things. And then we've got about 40% of you that participated in the previous practice years. And we'll also touch base on sort of the difference between the practice years and now that it's required and what that means related to the quality profile. So really appreciate you taking the time to answer that poll. So with that, Kim, we'll go back over to the slide deck and we can move to the first slide. So just wanted to start with kind of a really big high level overview just about, again, what we're going to talk about tonight and what that means for VQB5 sites. So the VQB5 quality profiles, they will include the site quality rating and they will be posted online starting in the fall of 2024. And this is all according to the guidelines that the Board of Education approved last June. The VQB5 quality profiles, they will include the site performance information and just some general site information that we'll talk about tonight. And they really are building on the success of sharing those practice year profiles with sites last year. So for those of you that were in practice year 2, you'll recognize a lot of the same information that's going on these profiles. And for those of you that were not participating, just know that we did take the time to get some feedback from sites as we moved into the planning this for the public profile release. This also means that families will have access to information about their quality options. That is part of the state law that required VQB5 participation in publicly funded programs. So what does that mean for you all for next year? So all of our publicly funded sites in Virginia and any of our non-publicly funded sites who have opted in to participate in VQB5, they will have an online quality profile starting next fall. That also means that your site will receive a certificate to document your quality rating level, and that is optional. If you want to display that at your site, you'll be able to do that. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can get that certificate. And again, that'll be shared in the fall. You don't have to display it, but it will be something that you also could display at your site. The other thing to note is that sites will have the opportunity to preview your quality rating information during the summer data verification. And this will be really important. This will be the last 2 weeks in July. This will be an opportunity for you to get back into Link B5. You'll get to see your quality rating, you'll get to see the site information, and you'll want to verify that everything's correct or if there's something that by chance is mistaken, you'll want to get that corrected prior to us releasing these in the fall. So we'll be sharing more information about that as we get closer to July. Next slide. So just to put it in context, this is a really big step for Virginia. We've had previous rating systems in the past that have really been voluntary and have included a smaller portion of sites. At this point, we are at a huge scale. So over 3,000 sites now are currently participating in VQB5. This includes all of our publicly funded sites and some non-publicly funded sites who have opted to participate. So all of those sites who are participating this year will receive that quality profile next year. And as you can see here on the screen, about half of those sites are childcare centers, which some of you may be at a childcare center. That's also about a fourth are about public schools, and another fourth there are family day homes. So this is a unified approach to posting quality information. It's not just for public school programs or just for childcare and family day homes. It's really a way to post unified quality information according to our state law here in Virginia. Next slide. Wanted to touch real quickly on the quality rating results, especially thinking about the poll where a lot of you were not actually in our practice years. So the way that we're calculating these quality rating results, it is the same as what we did in the practice years. So if you were in the practice years, you should be familiar with this rating calculation, but this might be a good refresher. If this is your first time participating, here's kind of a quick summary of how those quality rating results are determined. So the first thing to know is that you'll get interaction points and you'll get curriculum points. Most of your rating is based on interaction points. As you can see, that's up to 700 points possible. So what that means is all those local class observations that you all have been working so hard with your Ready region to complete in the fall and the spring, we will take an average of all those local class scores from all of your classrooms at every age level, and we'll keep kind of adding those together and averaging them out to get an overall average score for your site. And we'll multiply that times 100 just so we're not working with decimal points. And that'll be your interaction points. And I'll show you an example in just a second. The second way that you'll get points is through the curriculum points. So if you are using an approved curriculum in at least one classroom by May 31st, your site will receive an additional 100 points added to the score. So curriculum is not required, but if you are using it in at least one classroom, you'll get that additional 100 points. Then we will add your interaction points and your curriculum points together for your total points. And then we have 3 quality rating levels: exceeds expectations, meets expectations, and needs support. These are the same quality rating levels that we had in the practice years. We didn't want to change this rating level because we know that a lot of sites didn't participate in the practice years. We want folks to get familiar with this, and we want to have the data before we decide if we want to make any changes. So right now we're sticking with these 3 quality rating levels. So as we talk about the profiles, we'll talk a little bit more about what that means as far as posting those quality rating results. If by chance, I know some of you have probably heard about score replacement, if by chance with your external observations, if we compare them to your local observations in the same window and there's a significant score difference and we need to do a score replacement, that would get factored in at that interaction point level, just at that classroom level. The important thing to note, and we can certainly talk about this more at the end, is that overall, even with factoring in score replacement, what we've seen in the data is primarily the interaction points are still going to come from your local class scores because there are way more local class scores happening in your sites than the external. So class observation scores, a little bit of points for curriculum usage, and then that total quality ratings based on 3 categories. So let's look at an example on the next slide. So this is kind of just a basic example, but it works the same way really for a variety of programs. So we look at each age level. So in this example, it's a child care center with 1 infant classroom, 1 toddler, and 1 pre-K. And it's hard, you know, there's so many different types of programs out there. I know no one looks exactly the same, but whether or not you have 1 infant classroom or 3 infant classrooms, etc., what we do is we look at the fall class average score, and that's where we take all those dimensions that you're getting feedback on and we average them together to get that average score. And if you have more than one infant classroom, we'll just look at all those infant classrooms together and we'll give it an average. So we get a fall class average for each age level. Then we get a spring class average so that we're getting a representation from both the fall and the spring. And we add those together to get an overall average for each age level. So on this screen, you'll see that overall average for infant, for toddler, and for pre-K if you serve all three age levels. If you only serve one of these age levels, if you're a family child care provider, you just have your one classroom, it'll be that fall and that spring combined together. If you're a program that only has pre-K classrooms, but maybe you have 5 pre-K classrooms, it'll be all 5 of those classrooms averaged together. So either way, we're looking at this first by age level, and then we're getting that site average. So in this example, there's a 4.30. And that is what we multiply times 100. So this site would get 430 interaction points. Then if you look at the curriculum usage, in this example, the infant classroom is not yet using an approved curriculum, but the toddler and the pre-K classroom are. So that's an additional 100 points because there's at least one classroom using approved curriculum, and that comes to a total of 530 points for meeting expectations. We do have a quality rating user guide that we can share the link to. This has a lot more examples. It's got some family childcare examples, some Head Start, some public school, different kinds of childcare programs. So take a look at that if you'd like to see more details on how the quality ratings are determined. Next slide. So when we look at these quality profiles tonight and look at the samples, one thing to keep in mind is that our estimation is that our results will look fairly similar to our practice year 2 results. And what you're seeing here on the screen is that in practice year 2, nearly 99% of our sites who completed their required activities, they met or they exceeded expectations. We're expecting pretty similar results again. So as you're thinking about what these profiles are going to look like, I would encourage you to think about what it looks like from that meets expectations level, since that is most likely where most of our sites will fall. There will be a few sites that will meet, that exceeds expectations, and probably a few sites and that needs support. But as you're thinking about kind of what this means across the board, think about that probably most from that meets expectations level. On the next slide, if we look at it by site type, we actually see fairly similar results as well. So we've looked at this by centers, by family child cares, by public schools, and what we notice is slight variations by site type, but still overall, we're seeing that by far most sites, whether they're centers, family child care, or public schools, are meeting or exceeding those expectations. Next slide. So this is just a quick reminder. So if you were one of those sites who answered yes, that you have participated before in VQB5, you did receive a practice year 2 profile that should still be in your Link B5 reports tab in your account. In that practice year 2 prototype that also was approved by the Board of Education, there was site performance information on the top, and there was site information on the bottom based on your Link B5 profile. What we are doing now is we are taking this basic same information that was just on a kind of one-page PDF, and we are turning it into a more interactive online website version for families and the general public. But the information is fairly similar because the feedback that we received from practice year 2 was fairly positive about it being easy to understand, etc. So we are kind of building on what you've already seen if you were in practice year 2. Next slide. So just a quick timeline. We are now in this orange category here. So as I mentioned, we shared those practice year 2 prototypes privately with sites, and you had the opportunity to provide feedback. We are now in the spring, and we are very much on the way. We did 3 other sessions today, actually, of sharing the mock-ups with different site types and families. And we'll be very busy the next couple weeks trying to get these mock-up quality profiles out there and trying to get feedback on them. We basically need to get all of our feedback by May, and then in June we go to the Board of Education. We'll incorporate your feedback, take that to the board, and they will vote to approve that final profile. Then we'll work over the summer to finalize those. Again, you'll get to see a preview during your data verification in July. And then next fall is when the quality profiles will be publicly posted on a brand new VQB5 website. That is also when we'll start to do more actual information and communications to families about what the quality profiles mean. Although in a couple slides down, I'll share with you some of our initial examples of some communication to families that we'd like to start getting your feedback on as well. Next slide. So what we're going to do next is we're going to walk through these mock-ups. I believe you have received the mock-up packet in advance. It's one of the handouts as well. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at these already. What I'd like to do tonight is just kind of point out a couple key features on each of the different profile mock-ups, just to kind of really hone in on the types of things that we are looking for feedback on that hopefully will help kind of guide you as you think about responding to that feedback survey. So there's a homepage example that we'll look at first, and then we'll look at one site profile example, but in the packet, there are 4 different types of examples. There's a child care center example, a family child care, a Head Start, and a public school preschool example. They're fairly similar, so that's why we'll look mostly at the child care example tonight, but I'll try to point out some of the different features for the different site types. So let's start with the homepage. So a couple things to know about the homepage. This will be a new URL, which means where parents would type this in to find this quality search. Again, this is what will go live in the fall. And when they land on this page, the first thing that it will have is really a basic search feature. And so what a parent or anyone else who is looking for information about quality would do to start their search is they could type in the name of a specific program in that box that you see there, that search box, or they could type in a city name, a zip code, an address to get kind of a search for multiple programs within a certain area. A couple other things about the homepage. Up top, you'll notice there's a Google Translate version. That's really important so that we can have all of the quality profile available in multiple languages. So everything that you see in these site profiles will be available in multiple languages once this website launches. And then on the bottom of this homepage, there is the option for us to include up to 3 different buttons that would link to other early childhood websites across the state that would have important information. We don't have to have 3 links there, so if that feels distracting, let us know that in the feedback survey. If you have suggestions for what might be helpful because you'd like to have some other buttons there, that's another thing we'd like feedback on. The ones that are listed here are just our kind of proposal for you to consider, but we really are open to either having some different links or to just really keeping this homepage very simple and just having the search function. So that is definitely something we'd like to get your feedback on when you respond to the survey. Next slide. The other thing to note is that although the homepage is kind of a basic search feature, there will also be the ability to do an advanced search feature. And so this is where you can take the different filter options that are there on the left, and those are the site information pieces. And so a parent or anyone else who was searching for information could kind of pick the items that they want to filter their search for, and it would show a group of results based on that filter. So in this example, the filters chosen were a child care center that serves 2-year-olds, and they would have an address in there as well. And so what would happen in this example is that 30 sites came up within that search filter. There would be a map that would show where the sites were, and then there would be the list of the 30 different sites. So there will be, again, the ability to do that basic search on the homepage, but then also the ability to do a more advanced search based on certain filter items. Next slide. So now we're going to look at the actual site profile. So whether it's a child care center, a family child care, Head Start, or public school, they're all going to have the same basic format. So that's what I want to point out is kind of that overall format of the site profile. And again, the types of things that we're looking for feedback on. So the first thing here I highlighted is the date of the profile. So these quality profiles will be updated annually, and they will be shared publicly each fall. So for example, right here it shows 2023, 2024. So the site performance that will be posted in the fall will be based on what you all are doing right now during this current year. Again, it's based on an entire year, the fall and the spring results combined, and we'll update it in the fall, and we'll keep that date up there to indicate what the performance is based on. And then each year that will be continually be updated as well. Eventually, we will post historical information so that a family or someone else could also see what your past rating results were. But obviously, this is our very first year of posting this, so there won't be any historical information this first year. We are not posting practice year results. Those were truly just for practice. So this will be our first year. But then moving forward, we will also include some kind of information to show what previous rating results were. Next slide. Then on the left-hand side of every site profile, there will be kind of this grade column, and that grade column will include the general site information, things like the phone number, the address, the hours served, the ages served, the site type. These are all items that are entered into Link B5 in your profile. So if you were wondering why you were entering all that information, here is the answer. We will use that basic site information to publicize your site information on your quality profile. So that's why this part in particular will be what you'll want to review during data verification in case there's been an update to your hours or your contact information, because we'll want that information to be as accurate as possible. Next slide. So then on the right-hand side, this is where the performance information will be. And so this will include the quality rating information at the top, followed by some interactions performance information, and then followed by some curriculum performance information. And we'll hone in a little bit on each of these on the next couple of slides. So the first thing we wanted to look at, and we're actually going to do a poll here in just a second to get some of your initial feedback, is we wanted to show you the quality rating piece that's at the top of the performance section. So it basically looks the same for all the sites, but there are some slight differences based on the actual quality rating level. So the first thing you'll notice is that on the exceeds expectation example and the meets expectation, there's a little badge or a ribbon, some people call it. So that is one of our ways to kind of indicate kind of a quick visual indicator to families or the field that these sites are meeting or exceeding our expectations. So that's one option, is to have this little badge or ribbon. The other visual indicator that we'd like feedback on is the colors. So if you'll look really carefully at these profiles, you'll notice there's a blue outline on the exceeds expectation box, a green outline on the meets expectation, and a yellow on the needs support. And so that is another way that we could have a visual indicator of the different quality levels. We can do a combination of these things. We don't have to use any of them. And so so we're going to launch two polls here in just a minute to get your initial feedback on whether or not you like the idea of having the badge. There'll be a couple different options for you to share with us whether you like that. And then we'll also want to get your thoughts on whether or not you like having the colors there as well. And we'll take that feedback before we finalize these profiles. So I think with that, let's go ahead and launch the poll questions.
Would you like the badge question?
Yeah, we'll start with the badge question.
Okay, here we go.
So with this badge question, we have a couple options. We could just have the badge for exceeds expectations. So let us know if you think that's really your preference. We could have it like you saw on the screen for meets and exceeds expectations. If you don't think the badge or the ribbon is helpful, let us know that. And if you really don't care or you're not sure, that's also fine. So choose one of these options based on your overall feeling about having that little badge or ribbon there at the top. And Kim, whenever it looks like most people voted, we'll share the results.
Absolutely. I know that it takes a little while for people to read and select this on their phone because the print's quite small, so I'm just going to give it a few extra seconds. Okay, we are nearly at 70%. So if a few more people can register, oh, excellent, it's kicking up. We absolutely want your feedback on this, so thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share it out.
Okay, I'm always so excited to see what the results are. So it looks like the majority of folks attending tonight think that it's most helpful to have the badge for meets and exceeds expectations. A few folks thought it was helpful just for exceeds, about a results for not thinking that that's helpful. And then about a third of you weren't really sure or didn't have a strong opinion about that, which is totally understandable as well. That's similar to what we've seen in some other areas. So we'll kind of take your responses and add them in with what we're gathering around the state. So let's go ahead and launch the second question, which is related to the colors about on the rating boxes. So this is the one about the colors being helpful. And I think there was supposed to be a third option there. So if you don't think the colors are helpful at all, which isn't showing up on the screen, just go ahead and put that. You could send it, Kim, through the question box maybe?
Yes, and it looks like there's a space for it, so I'm not sure why it's not appearing.
I know, it does look right.
It looks like there's a space where it's supposed to say. And so what was the response that you want them to put in the question box?
So there were three choices. It was supposed to be, as you see here, that I think the colors are helpful. There was a second choice that's not showing up that says, I don't think the colors are helpful. And then the third choice is just not sure or neutral about the colors. So for some reason you are thinking the colors are not helpful, you're not a fan of those, just put that in. I know it's not a question, but you can stick it in the question box, or you could put it in the feedback survey as well.
And some people have been answering questions for the poll, a few in the question box already.
Okay, great.
So, excellent. I'm going to go ahead and close.
Okay, so based on these two options, it looks like most of you think the colors are helpful and some of you not quite sure. I will also share that one of the suggestions that we got in an earlier presentation in another region was to have the badges actually also match the colors. So rather than having a blue badge for both meets and exceeds, is to possibly have a blue badge for the exceeds and a green badge for the meets expectations. So we've captured that feedback as well, and we'll continue to kind of look for your responses. When we get to the link of the feedback survey, if you haven't already responded to that, this is one of those things we'd love to hear more about. Kind of explain, same with the badges and the colors. If you want to tell us more about why you liked them or didn't like them, that would be really great information for us to hear about as well. Okay, I think we'll go back over to the slides. And you can skip over this one. So we're just going to hone in here quickly on the performance information. We've gotten a couple questions since our webinar in March, and so wanted to kind of focus in a little first on the interactions performance and then the curriculum performance. So the interactions performance will show up right below the rating information. So on the next slide, if you'll go ahead to that, I'm going to zoom in on what that would look like for different site types. So what you're seeing here is on the left there's a child care center example. This would have it broken down performance by the 3 different age levels, since most child care centers in Virginia, based on our data, serve infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. The family day home example that's on the right at the top, from our data in Link B5, most of our family day homes serve mixed ages. So rather than having 3 different age levels, we will just have program serves mixed ages. And then the public school example, again, based on our data, we didn't see any public schools that are in our VQB5 system that serve infants, so we would just have a listing for toddler classrooms and pre-K. Most public schools actually only serve the pre-K age level, but there are some public schools that also serve toddler classrooms, so that's why that is listed as well. One thing to note, so we do have to post some age level information. That is part of what the Board of Education is tasking us with, is to take that overall site rating, but also to break it down by age level, kind of similar to how you break down information by a grade level at an elementary school, etc. But how we explain that age level information, we have some flexibility. So right now, what you're seeing on the screen where we talk about the description there, or we talk about the class scores exceeding expectations, we can adjust that language in that text. So that's actually what we'd like the feedback on, is if you have If you like how this is worded, you think this is really easy to understand, let us know that. If you have a different suggestion on how you think we should phrase that age level performance, that would be another area we'd really appreciate that feedback on. But overall, we do have to have some age level performance information, again, based on what we're required to do. On the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about how do we, right now in this proposal version in the mock-ups, what are we using to determine that exceeds, meets, and needs support. So what we are doing is we are looking at that total class score. That means the full year class score for the entire age level. So again, if there's just the one infant classroom, then we're just looking at the fall and the spring, the full year class score average. But if there are 3 infant classrooms, we're going to look at all 3 of those infant classrooms and average them together. So what we're proposing again is that we use those high, mid, and low range scores that align with the class tool, and that is what we would use to look at that interactions performance. So an overall full year score that's in the high range would be listed on the profile as exceeding expectations. An overall full year score at the mid range would meet expectations. An overall full year score at the low range would be in that needs support. This is also meant to help kind of guide improvement focus. And so that's what you can see on that right-hand column is kind of some guidance to think about what that means related to your improvement focus. I also just wanted to point out that we will continue to prioritize any classroom that gets a total score of 3.99 or lower for our state-funded coaching services. So even though that 3.99 is in kind of that mid-range, we know that that's kind of a broad category, that mid-range, and so we do want to offer state-funded coaching services to classrooms in that range, and then obviously we'd prioritize those low-range classrooms too. So next slide. So now I want to hone in on the curriculum information. So again, on all the site profiles, the ratings will be at the top, then the interaction performance, and then the curriculum performance information. So next slide. So there are 3 basic ways that this curriculum performance is going to show up. The first 2 that you're seeing there will both be the same as far as the points awarded. So they would equal 100 points. So let's talk about what those are. So that one that's there on the top is if we look at the classroom information for your site after May 31st, and if every birth to 5 classroom at your site, and if you're a family child care and you just have that one classroom, we would report that your site is using a VDOE approved curriculum in 100% of your classrooms. I think it's worded slightly different on the family child care example, so you might want to take a closer look at that one. Again, if you're using that approved curriculum, just because we know there's typically just that one classroom, and then it would list the actual curriculum used. The second, and that would be that 100 points for the site. The second way that it might look is if on May 31st, if we look at your classrooms at your site, and if at least one of your birth to 5 classrooms at the site is using an approved curriculum, but not every classroom, then your performance curriculum information would say the site has reported using a DOE curriculum in at least one classroom. And then again, it would list the curriculums based on what you selected in Link B5. So that is also worth 100 points. So those first 2 options, although they're worded differently for performance information, they are both the same as far as awarding those points. The last option is if we look at your site profile and none of your birth to 5 classrooms at the site are reporting using an approved curriculum, your performance would list this site reported they are not using an approved curriculum, and it would obviously say none for curriculum used. We are proposing that in the sense that we know there are some curriculums that you might be using that are not necessarily approved, so we didn't want to say that you aren't using any curriculum. We're just trying to point out that it's not a curriculum on our current approved list. So we do, again, have to list curriculum performance information, so keep that in mind, but how we list it, so if you like or you don't like this phrasing, that is something that we would like some feedback on. And we would particularly like to know a suggestion for what you'd prefer to have listed. We're trying not to have, again, a paragraph about the curriculum usage, but if you have a suggestion for possibly a better way to indicate that performance, that is something that we'd love to hear about in that feedback profile. Next slide. I think one of the last, I think there's just a couple slides here, and then again, we'll pause, see if there's some questions to talk about and comments. So one thing to note is that what happens if there's a site that does not have a VQB5 quality profile? And there are a couple reasons why there could be early childhood programs in Virginia that would not actually be considered participating in VQB5. So those include a non-publicly funded site who doesn't choose to participate. They don't have to if they're not getting any public dollars. It could also be a site that started receiving public funds after October 1st registration. They would be required the next year, but they wouldn't necessarily be required this year. And then the other two categories are sites that didn't meet that participant enrollment minimum as of October 1st, or a site that didn't have at least one full-time birth to 5 classroom as of October 1st. So if by chance your site is in any of those categories, what we're proposing is that if a parent searched for your site or looked up by address, that there would be just a basic kind of site information. So there would still be that basic information about your site, but we basically just have a little statement there like you see on the screen that would say that you don't currently have a site quality profile, and it would just link back to the health and safety website, which would be our licensing information. So we do need to have some kind of linkage for those non-participating sites. But again, if you have any feedback on how we actually word that or the formatting of this, let us know. Next slide. So this is the item I think I mentioned earlier. One of the pieces of feedback we got after our March webinar was that a lot of people had questions about how are we going to explain what VQB5 is to families, how are we going to talk about what a class observation is, how are we going to talk about the class enrollment, classroom list information. And so what we've put together here is kind of our first version, and basically our first attempt at trying to message to families in a FAQ document about VQB5. So this is one of your handouts. We did just today get it translated in Spanish. So I was talking to Kim, we'll get that information out to you. We are really also looking for feedback on this as well. We think that we'll kind of tweak this along the way as we get ready for the fall. We'd also like to think about different formats to share this with families. I know sometimes as a former parent, now my kids are older, but when I had young children, I didn't always look at all the details in every handout that came home from their childcare or their school. So trying to think about, we could have handouts, we also could have short videos, we could have social media posts. So we'd really love kind of your thoughts on how can we communicate the importance of quality early childhood to families and what we're doing with VQB5. So take a look at this document. This is, again, kind of our first attempt, but we'd really appreciate your feedback. You can put it on that feedback survey. You can send it to your Ready region. You can email your thoughts to us, and we'll just kind of continually be gathering and refining these messages as well. Next slide. Okay, so let me just pause here before we talk a little bit more about the actual feedback process and just see if there's any questions, Kim, that you think we should stop and address with the group.
Sure. We've had a few questions come in, and the first question that came in was just when you were explaining the ratings in general, before you sort of dove into the quality profiles. And the question was, if you do not have a curriculum, do you have to then exceed expectations in order to have a good score? So what do you do if you don't have a curriculum?
Great question. So to meet the state's expectations, you do not have to have an approved curriculum. You can meet the state's expectations with class scores that are in that average range of a 4.0 or higher. And in that quality rating user guide, and I can't remember if I don't think that's one of the handouts, but we can get the link to that. That's on our website. There are some examples of sites that are not using an approved curriculum, but still had class scores within that meets expectation range for meeting the state's expectations. If it exceeds expectations, you would actually have to have an approved curriculum to get to that exceeds level. That's because, again, we aren't requiring the use of approved curriculum. So in addition to having those high range class scores, you would also have to have that extra 100 points for using approved curriculum to get to the exceeds level. But again, our goal is really to help programs meet expectations and to meet the state's expectations. You can do that with class scores that are in that mid range as well, that 4.0 or higher, without using an approved curriculum.
Thank you. And then another question that came in when you were first discussing how families would go to a separate website to find the quality profiles. As someone asked, does that mean the VDSS childcare search is going away?
So that is not going away. That is part of our licensing information that we're required to have. And again, keep in mind, there are licensed programs that don't have any public funds that will not be in VQB5 participating. So we need to have that health and safety information. I believe they're working on revising that through a new system, the licensing system, but that's kind of a separate piece. Our goal with these quality profiles is to link the information. So we will have those links to the health and safety information, and we will also work with our partners that post the licensing information to have a link that goes to our quality profiles, so that if a family was looking at the health and safety information, there would also be a link to say, if you'd like more information about the quality, click here. Same for school quality profiles. I don't know if anybody on tonight is with the K-12 system, but the public schools all have the elementary, middle, and high schools. They have these K-12 quality profiles. And so same thing, we will try to link the preschool information at those public schools to those K-12 quality profiles. So we will work with a variety of state and local partners to try to link the information kind of back and forth between our quality profiles that are required by state law to where there's other information about early childhood programs.
Thank you. And I think that answered another question about how will families know where to find this homepage if it exists sort of separately.
Yeah, and that actually came up earlier in the session. So one of the things our website developers are tasked to do is, and again, I don't really understand how Google searches work, but according to them, they will work on the different kind of search functions so that when a family goes in to search for some of those common words that they might type in, that these quality profile, this new website would pop up first on a search, or most likely would pop up. I don't know that we can always guarantee that it would pop up. So our goal is to have this become kind of up at the top of kind of a Google search if somebody's looking. I also think that we will need to work with partners at the state, local, and regional level to kind of also link between your websites, our websites. So we would love additional thoughts on, because we know there's lots of different information out there about quality early childhood. So if you have suggestions on places on how we can kind of partner with different agencies or organizations to kind of cross-link information. We'll also encourage you, if you're a childcare site that has your own website, that you can post a link to your own quality profile information. So I think there's lots of different ways we could do that, but our goal would be to try to make this kind of a well kind of publicized search feature.
Got it. Thank you. And then someone else was asking specific questions when you were mentioning curriculum. And is Montessori curriculum specifically an approved curriculum? So I'm going to go ahead and put the link to where you can find out about all the currently approved and vetted curriculums and all the additional information in the question box. But if you wanted to sort of give a little bit more information on that, Chris, it would be appreciated.
Yeah, I think I know there's at least one Montessori curriculum on the approved list. I can't remember offhand if there's more than one since we've added so many. So that doesn't mean that every Montessori curriculum is on there, but take a look at what's on there. And if you are using a different version by chance, you are welcome to submit that for the approval review process, which is also, there's information about what that takes to submit a review request on our curriculum website.
Thank you. And I'll put that link to everyone in case anyone else had that question. Someone was asking, why is the childcare.va site not being used to host the quality profiles?
Well, that's a complicated question. There's a lot of information that's required by kind of our child care block grant federal requirements to be on our child care VA website. So it'll definitely be linked. So I don't know, some of you may have been in our Virginia quality system, and if you had been in that, you would have noted that when you went to a search through the Child Care VA, there would have actually been a box to ask about looking up a program by its quality level, and that would have led to the VQ quality levels information. So we will work with the Child Care VA team. They're all part of our DOE access team now. So we will try to link all that information, but partly the reason it's not just completely on that website, kind of two reasons. One, there's a lot of different requirements for that website. And two, there are programs under that Child Care VA that don't have to participate in VQB5, again, if they're not publicly funded. And actually the third, as I'm saying this out loud, is Child Care VA does not have any public school programs, and our state law requires that all of our birth to 5 programs have quality rating information in one location. So again, we'll have this one place that'll list all birth to 5 programs, whether it's child care centers, family child care, public school, Head Start, but we will certainly be working closely with our partners at Child Care VA. And again, really open to working with any other agencies or organizations that help support family child care searches. So please give us those additional suggestions as well.
Thank you. Sorry, we have several questions that are coming in more about curriculum, since we mentioned it, and about finding low cost or free curriculum. I put that link in the chat, but if you wanted to.
Sure. So I believe there are 3 free low-cost options on the list right now. The Stream in 3 option, which is state-funded option, which is only available to publicly funded programs in the state of Virginia. And then the other 2 are open-sourced free curriculums. There's an Early Learning Matters that I believe was funded through some partnerships with the Department of Defense, but it's an open source curriculum that's all infant, toddler, and preschool, and some family child care curriculum options that are online and available to anyone, whether you're Department of Defense or not. And then core, yep, and I see you in the chat, put that in, Core Knowledge Preschool Sequence, which is also an open source option. So all 3 of those currently are the free supported options to look into.
Thank you. And then someone else was asking a question about curriculum and class observations. And so I think there's just a general question about how, again, if you don't mind repeating, how the profile and the ratings are created, the baseline for that.
So out of the 800 points that you can possibly get for our rating system, up to 700 of those are from your class observations. And that's really important because time and time again, the research that's based nationally and in Virginia that looks at how do what quality indicators closely align with school readiness outcomes for children, it almost always comes back primarily to the quality of those teacher-child interactions. Curriculum's kind of the second most important thing that comes up on the use of quality curriculum that really aligns with kind of key social, emotional, and academic outcomes for children. So that's why we wanted to include curriculum as well. But having a curriculum does not necessarily mean that your interactions are being done in a positive way that supports social emotional development or early learning. And so our focus really is on helping you have those materials through a quality curriculum, but ultimately what you are doing through your teacher-child interactions is what we're looking for the most to distinguish the quality of our early childhood programs in Virginia. So we will, so right now, again, most of your score is going to come from those teacher-child interactions, because again, based on our overall information, that is what most closely aligns with school readiness. We do want to encourage the use of that quality curriculum, which is why we're awarding that 100 points. And then I think it's really important to note that we are, at the beginning stages of this work in Virginia. We are just now in our first year of 100% of our publicly funded programs participating. So what we're starting to do is look at class scores and compare them to the curriculum use information. And over time, as we start to see trends, if we start to see kind of key things that are leading more to school readiness, we can make some decisions about possibly looking at that information or how we calculate a rating differently. But right now, we're not going to do anything different because our goal really is to focus in on interactions and to encourage the use of quality curriculum. But over time, we may make some adjustments to that. So would welcome folks to share their feedback about the use of curriculum in our system. Just know we aren't going to change anything for this upcoming year, but in future years, there certainly is the possibility to look both at data and feedback from the field on making some changes.
Thank you, Chris. That is it for the questions that have come in thus far. We may gather a few more as you go.
Sure. So I think these last 3 slides, what we'll do, we won't really pause for a whole lot of discussion since I know the way that we're working tonight is on a webinar, but I wanted to kind of point out some of the things that are in the feedback survey to give you a sense again of the types of things we're looking for. So if you want to go on to the next slide. So this is the profile mockup packet. Again, you have this as a handout. If by any chance you aren't able to download that handout, you can also access it via this QR code. A couple things to note about the mockup packet. There's an instruction page, and kind of at the bottom of the instructions, that's where you'll find the actual link to the feedback survey. So if you felt like you've already looked at these mockups, just go directly to that feedback survey and give us your feedback. If you need more time to look at the mockup examples, please take the time to do that, but those are available for you as well. There's 2 versions in the mockup packet. There's a version that has a bunch of red and green boxes on it. Those are meant to kind of help provide some additional information that I may have not covered tonight, kind of to help you as you're thinking about these profiles and help you with giving us feedback. We do need all the quality profile feedback on these initial mockups by May 10th so that we can incorporate your feedback into the version that we take to the Board of Education. We will continue to kind of take the profiles out to the field, and we certainly have the option throughout the year to kind of tweak language. So it's not like May 10th is the deadline to ever submit feedback to us, but for this first phase, we do need your feedback no later than May 10th. And then on the next 2 slides, if you'll go ahead to the next slide, just kind of wanted to kind of give you a sense of, if you haven't looked at the feedback survey, what we'll kind of be asking you. And so on the feedback survey, you'll first see some questions that'll say, do you agree or disagree? And there's kind of a range of agreement on some basic things about the homepage. So we'd like to know your thoughts on if the homepage is easy to navigate. Does the text on the homepage provide a good description for families? Is the information on the homepage easy to understand? And so you can let us know if you agree or disagree with those statements. And certainly if you disagree, please then take the time for the second part of the feedback survey and let us know what your suggestions are. Let us know what it is that you particularly like or dislike about the homepage. And then if you'll go to the next slide, similar structure here in the feedback survey. Again, we'll start by asking if you agree or disagree with these statements. We'd like to know if the information featured in these site profiles, if you feel like it'll be helpful to families, if you feel like it'll be helpful to sites. We'd like to know if the layout is appealing to you. Is it easy to read and navigate? Does the performance section make sense to you? And then overall, are the quality rating results easy to understand? So again, we're looking for kind of your level of agreement or disagreement with those items. And then again, particularly if there's something that you disagree with, we really would like to know then what kind of explain to us your thoughts there, and especially would appreciate any suggestions that you have for these actual site profiles. So I know we don't have a whole lot of time to actually open it up to discussion tonight, but that's where this would be really helpful. Or if you want to reach out and talk about it with your Ready region, they can also gather some of your thoughts and email them to us as well. And I think that might wrap us up on the next slide. Yep. So just a reminder, and we'll pause here and continue to answer some questions. But for those of you that need to leave tonight as we get into the evening, we will continue to gather and really look forward to getting your individual feedback responses through that online feedback form through May 10th. And at any time, if you have additional feedback or questions, send them to our team at the VQB5 doe.virginia.gov email. You can also respond to the feedback survey more than once. So if you already responded, but after this presentation you have new thoughts, you're welcome to go back in and respond again. It's an anonymous survey. We just ask a few questions about your site type and your region, but otherwise you are welcome to respond as many times as helpful. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Kim, to either address more questions or to wrap us up.
Wonderful, thank you. We are getting a lot of thank you very much. This was very helpful and informative in our question box, but I do not see any new questions. So with that, I will stay on. We will stay on for just another minute or two in case anyone is typing a long question in. But if not, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and a huge thanks to Chris for taking so much time to really explain this and to answer specific questions from our region. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Chris, and we hope you have a wonderful night.
Thanks, everybody.